On a single autumn day in 2025, millions of Americans took to the streets in every U.S. state. They rallied under a simple but powerful banner: No Kings. What was this movement? Why now? And what does it tell us about democracy, authority, and protest in America? This is the story of the No Kings protests. Who is behind them, the issues they raise, how the authorities responded, and what lessons they may hold for citizens everywhere. The No Kings protests are a nationwide series of demonstrations in the U.S. organized to highlight concern that the country's political system is sliding towards authoritarianism and to assert that America has no kings. Power belongs to the people. According to the official website of the movement, they state, on October 18th, more than 7 million of us rose up at more than 2,700 events in all 50 states to say, America has no kings. The movement emphasizes nonviolent, lawful protest. The name is deliberately evocative. It draws on the idea of a king as a symbol of unchecked power, and it positions the protests in democratic language. We are the people. You are not the king. According to media coverage, the most recent protest day, 18th of October 2025, involved millions across all 50 U.S. states in more than 2,600 rallies. One explainer notes, the No Kings protests bring a street party vibe to cities nationwide. Protesters voiced concerns about immigration detentions, military deployments in cities, and erosion of democratic norms. To understand No Kings, we must look at the political backdrop. The protests emerge amid growing public unease in the U.S. about perceived overreach of executive power, federal militarized deployments, large-scale immigration enforcement, and shifts in norms of democracy and governance. For example, one June 2025 edition of the protests coincided with the 250th anniversary parade of the U.S. Army. Critics argued the parade and related displays were reminiscent of authoritarian pageantry. Furthermore, the movement's organizers include coalitions of progressive groups such as Indivisible and others who say they are responding to what they call democratic backsliding. According to an Indian Express explainer, the second No Kings demonstrations are underway, just ahead of large crowds, to express disapproval against the policies of the Trump administration. Issues highlighted include massive tariffs and inflationary pressures, sharper deportation, young immigration enforcement, use of federal forces in cities, and a sense that conventional checks and balances are weakening. What exactly are protesters demanding? While the movement is diverse and loosely organized, several consistent themes emerge. 1. Rejecting authoritarianism. No kings. The phrase directly signals opposition to perceived monarchical or autocratic behavior by the executive, encapsulated in slogans like no thrones, no crowns, no kings. 2. Protecting democratic institutions. Many protesters emphasize that the Constitution and separation of powers matter. The Constitution is not optional. 3. Civil rights and immigrant protections. For example, immigration raids and federal agents in cities are cited as triggers for mobilization. 4. Economic concerns and tariffs. The Indian Express article points to rising costs of goods, car prices, topped $50,000 average, and people feeling economic strain as part of what drives the unrest. 5. Nonviolent mass mobilization, bottom-up organizing. A key feature is the sheer scale of events and aspiration to build collective civic power. The Forbes piece on lessons for mobilizing mentions that raw passion must be accompanied by clarity and structure for change. The movement is remarkably large and geographically broad. Some key figures. Organizers claim over 7 million participants across more than 2,700 events in all 50 states on 18th October 2025. Survey data in Washington, D.C. indicated the typical protester was an educated white woman in her 40s, though the movement spans multiple demographics. The movement is present in major cities, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and smaller towns alike. Because of its nationwide reach, it signals not a local flare-up, but a broad-based mobilization of civic energy. The protests did not go unnoticed by political and governmental actors. The reactions reveal much about the stakes involved. On one side, the organizers insist on non-violence. Their website states, "A core principle behind all No Kings events is a commitment to non-violent action. Weapons of any kind should not be brought to events." On the other side, prominent Republican leaders characterize the protests as hate America rallies. For example, House Speaker Mike Johnson said, "I encourage you to watch. We call it the Hate America Rally that will happen Saturday." President Donald Trump dismissed them as a joke and claimed they were orchestrated by radical left groups. In addition, before the protests, some states mobilized strong law enforcement joint force presence, e.g., in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott announced deployment of the National Guard ahead of a No Kings rally in Austin. Meanwhile, protesters accused the administration of doubling down on authoritarian tactics, e.g., AI-generated videos mocking protesters, images of the president depicted as King Trump. These reactions, both from the government and organizers, point to the contested nature of the protests, whether they represent patriotic dissent or destabilizing anti-American action. It's easy to see the No Kings protests purely through the lens of civil rights and democracy, but there is also a significant economic and international dimension. According to the Indian Express, the large turnout seems more a societal pushback, but visible pain points are emerging. Surging car prices in the U.S. are in part down to Trump's tariffs. The article explains that while broad economic metrics looked okay, there were underlying stresses. Inflation in key sectors, tariffs that could bite later, consumer costs rising. So the protest movement is not just about politics. It also reflects economic grievances and public frustration at cost of living pressures. Internationally, the movement's scale and global images resonate. Though it is a U.S. domestic phenomenon, it signals to other democracies how public mobilization can intersect with global issues like supply chains, trade, economics. For anyone studying civic movements, the No Kings protests offer several lessons. Scale matters. Mobilizing millions across thousands of locations in a coordinated way sends a signal beyond the individual events. Forbes noted, "The No Kings events remind us that good intentions aren't a strategy. Movements need clarity and structure to turn passion into power." Symbolism and message clarity. The slogan, "No Kings," is simple, evocative, easy to visualize. Crowns crossed out, yellow shirts, no thrones. Nonviolence as strategy. By explicitly committing to peaceful protest, the movement seeks wide legitimacy. Linking issues: democracy, civil rights, economic pain, immigration, executive power. By interlinking these, the movement broadens its appeal beyond a single grievance. Facing backlash. The protest engages with opposition narratives, e.g., hate America, showing that dissent itself becomes a site of struggle over meaning. But no movement is without challenges. Here are some caveats: loose structure, leadership ambiguity. While decentralized, this may hinder translation into concrete policy change or sustained push-through. Forbes pointed this out. Fragmentation of issues. Linking too many issues can dilute messaging, making it harder for the public to understand exactly what is being demanded. Possible backlash, polarization. As we've seen, political opponents attempt to label the movement un-American. This risk of polarization can reduce its persuasive effect among undecided populations. Economic headwinds. If economic issues, tariffs, inflation, worsen, the movement may need to broaden from protest to policy advocacy, a tougher step. Duration and momentum. Many protesters emphasize, if we lose momentum, we lose the fight. Sustaining millions of participants, converting energy into institutional change is the hard part. While this is a US-based movement, the lessons resonate globally. In an era of heightened democratic fragility, strong executives, populist politics, and social media amplifications, No Kings shows how civil society can respond. For audiences in India and elsewhere, including our viewership in India, the concept of no one above the law Power belongs to the people, and mass, peaceful mobilization are highly relevant. Also, trade, tariffs, and global economy are connected. As the Indian Express article shows, domestic political protest is often rooted in economic grievances tied to global supply chains. So what happens next for the No Kings movement? The official movement website calls for follow-up, e.g. a live stream call on October 21st to discuss what comes next. The challenge now is turning this massive mobilization into sustained civic engagement, policy influence, electoral action, or institutional reform. For observers, keep watching how federal and state authorities respond, how media frames the protests, whether protests remain nonviolent, and how public opinion shifts. In the end, democracy is not guaranteed. It is something that citizens must defend, again and again. The No Kings protests are a vivid example of that in action. Whether they produce lasting change remains to be seen, but they have already left a mark. Thank you for joining this documentary overview of the No Kings protests. If you found this useful, please subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, remember, the power belongs to the people.